Miss Nilufer Koch, thank you for joining us today on News in India. And we are speaking amid a tense and uncertain ceasefire between the United States and Iran. A pause that was initially agreed to for 2 weeks and now has been extended indefinitely by President Trump while negotiations continue under Pakistani mediation and a US naval blockade remains in place. Given that President Trump and Israel initiated the military actions against Iran, what is the Kurdish point of view on the causes and consequences of this war? What is the situation inside Iran? What is your assessment?
It's my pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you the Kurdish perspective. Since last year, when Iran was firstly attacked by Israel in the 12 days war, the Kurdish parties in Iran immediately created a coalition for any case. And it was a very smart strategy to bring all the powers of Iranian Kurdish parties together. So for any threat which can affect the Kurds, the 10 million Kurds inside of Iran. And I think the position was clear for the Kurds because they have been taking lessons from the US position in Syria just in January when the US decided to take side for the Jolani government, the jihadist government, and not preferring to continue the alliance with the Kurds in the coalition. As you remember, we had a coalition with the US to defeating the Islamic State. But in the end, it was clear that the US have decided for Jolani's government. And this was a lesson for the Kurds in Iran when President Trump was asking the Kurds to become a part of the war against Iran. But they decided to ignore Iran, neither US politics, because not any opportunity is good as a good one. That's why they have chosen for the third way strategy, which means we don't accept any invitation which wouldn't benefit the interests of the Kurds. Because the strategy of any state involved in this war is different one than the Kurdish one. So that's why the Kurds have been taking the third way strategy.
Additionally, with Pakistan playing a key role in mediating, it's mediating in role in ceasefire talks and negotiation in Islamabad. How does Kurds assess the reliability of such mediators who themselves not only support but they use terrorism against its own neighbors?
Well, it's a hypocrisy of current political strategy in the Third World War we are facing now, when a state which is oppressing its own citizens and all the investment of states is based on military security like Pakistan is doing. And the alliance with Turkey is, of course, in our concern because what we try to do in Turkey is now trying to solve the Kurdish problem inside of Turkey through dialogue. And when we see that Turkey is cooperating with Pakistan on the issue of security, military, that's our concern. And we have been also seeing this example in Turkey when Turkey was oppressing the Kurds as supporting jihadists in Syria against the Kurds and then later on offering the US to become a mediator in the Ukraine-Russian war. We see this similar experience now in Pakistan. And I do think the acceptance that Pakistan could mediate is not just a US decision. I think also the Sunni Islam bloc led by Turkey, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia have been the main forces behind offering Pakistan as a mediator in the case because Turkey was fearing that the Kurds could make use of the opportunity in Iran. And Saudi Arabia and Qatar haven't been expecting that Iran would attack them with their drones. So that's why both have been also trying to convince the US to accept Pakistan as a mediator.
But do you think that both US and Iran should rely on Asim Munir, the army chief of Pakistan, as Pakistan itself does not recognize Israel? Is it a neutral mediator? Do you think so?
Well, the fact is now it is a mediator, so we can't change the current de facto role which Pakistan is playing. But I think states whose tradition is based on military aggression are not reliable partners in offering in mediating for peace and non-violent solutions like Pakistan or Turkey. So that's why I think it's a challenging problem for all of us, seeing that states who have been supporting jihadism, supporting threatening groups against neighbors, or supporting Turkey in their militarily and also mercenary policy, it's of course a problem for from our side.
We also seen President Donald Trump, he has said that US tried to covertly arm Iranian protesters through Kurdish intermediaries weeks before the current war was launched, and even as the Washington was engaged in talks with Tehran. Were Kurds involved at any stage during this war? Were weapons provided to the Kurds fighters?
You know, President Trump's strategy, "Make America Great Again," MAGA, it's a challenging policy for us, because from this perspective, from the MAGA perspective, we do believe that all which serve the U.S. interest as proxies or mercenaries. I think in this case we have been clear, saying, sorry, you are knocking at the wrong door. This war is not for our benefit. I mean, we could use the short-term options we had, but the consequences for long-term would be a very high burden on the Kurdish shoulder in the apocalypse of the Middle East. That's why the Kurds rejected, said without any convincing guarantees from the U.S. side, they wouldn't do anything. And I think that was the case in the last 40 days of the war. And the issue of offering the Kurds arms, it's a mystery now. Nobody knows which Kurds they have been providing weapons, because the mainly Kurdish parties rejected this claim. They haven't achieved any of the arms, whether the Kurds in Iraq or the Kurds in Iran itself. So it's not a clear issue. So I think we need to know from the U.S. Administration a clear response to whom they offered to whom they gave the weapons. It's not clear. So we do believe that it was a kind of a tactic to provocate Iran against the Kurds, and that's why the Kurds prevented to fall in the trap and said no. So we don't. I mean, in the case, anyhow, the Kurds don't need any arms from anyone, because they have their own arms. Since the Kurds are resisting the Iranian policy of denial against the Kurdish people inside of Iran. That's why they have been resisting the Iran since centuries. So it's not the case that they depend on the U.S. arms or U.S. Support. The opposite is the case. The Kurdish geostrategic settlement is more important for the U.S. than the U.S. Support for the Kurds currently. So the Kurds know their strategic importance for the region generally, and that's why they don't accept any options or invitation to be part of a war. And that was the case in the last 40 days. So the Kurds clearly said, we are just joining a war when the Kurdish society, 15 million Kurds, if there are 10 or 15 million Kurds in Iran are affected by anyone, or any state is going to attack the Kurds, then they will take up the armed struggle against the states, but not for as proxies or mercenaries of any of the states, whether it's the US or any other state.
But Ms. Koch, the leader of an Iranian Kurdish nationalist group based in northern Iraq's semi-autonomous Kurdish region, said that it is highly likely that Iranian Kurds will stage a cross-border ground operation into Iran. Was there such a plan?
No. The coalition of seven political parties of Kurds in Iran, they are clear. They say, we just attack Iran if they attack our people inside of Iran. Indeed, they have been very clear. So there are some small parties who sometimes try to threatening Iran by these verbal oral statements, but it was not the case de facto on the ground.
Okay, so India initiated Operation Sindoor last year in response to the Pahalgam attack that took place same day a year back. It is reported that Turkey helped Pakistan during the 4-day military conflict between India and Pakistan with drones and operators. What could have been the reason behind Turkey's support to Pakistan?
I think since the Ottoman times, there have been reliable friendship ground for both. Since then, they are in a very, let's say, brotherhood alliance, which makes also for us difficult, because we try to de-escalate Turkish aggression regarding the Kurds inside of Turkey, and seeing that Turkey has a partner which is actually doing the opposite, strengthening the violent the violent part of Turkish politics, this is also a challenge to us. And we have seen that both have been using proxies like jihadist forces. So this is a threat not just for us as Kurds or for India. I think it's a threat for regional security and stability in Middle East. That's why we have to come together to prevent any further, because I do believe when the Iranian war will be started again, and I'm sure that it will be, because now the ceasefire means that both sides need time for recovering militarily and politically. It's a part of the hybrid warfare where it has different dimension of war, where sometimes it's militarily, sometimes it's politically. So, and I think Iran won't be the Iran which it was once. And so in these, the threat that, again, on the ground, proxies like jihadism can be activated is a threat, I think, which is in the hand of Pakistan and in Turkey. So there we have to take any prevention measures, because it will affect the Kurds in Iraq, where nearly 6,000 jihadists have been imprisoned, those who have been brought from Syria to Iraq. So it seems a threat to all of us when this state doesn't give up to use this kind of proxies.
Okay, talking about the cultural ties between India and Kurdistan, what is the similarity between Indians and Kurds? We have seen a lot of similarities between the two. The language is almost similar. There are some words that are very common between India and Kurds.
Yes, despite the cultural values we are sharing, particularly in the case of language, I do see also politically we must come more together, more closer to each other, because we too are facing states who are able to use non-conventional armies like the proxies. We have experience with Turkey in Syria, and we do fear that Turkey can also activate them in Iraq, and also Pakistan, which is using them against India. In this, I think we need also to strengthen the relations also on the political terms, and that will be for the benefit of all of us, I think. And I would add, next to the cultural values we are sharing, we need also to share some political values together, which means seeking for a stabilization of the region and looking how we can support each other. That would be our desire for the future in our relation with the society and politics in India.
Thank you, Ms. Koch. It was nice talking to you. Thank you for taking time for us. Thank you.
It was my pleasure.